Lee Min-soo hurt someone badly, and no one at school ever imagined he was capable of that, because on the surface he looked ordinary, quiet, harmless. But Lee Min-soo was never harmless. He was running a small illegal business right under everyone's nose. He bought blood donation gift cards and resold them for 1,001. The real value was around 1,200, so people happily bought from him. It was technically a crime, but he was a minor. He believed nothing serious could happen to him. For a while, he was right. Until the second in command of the most feared gang found out. They cornered him and demanded everything he had earned. They knew he would not report them. When Min-soo refused, they started attacking him without hesitation. And that was when Kang Yuzong stepped in, his older brother, the one who had been adopted by a wealthy family and now lived a completely different life. Yuzong handled the bullies easily. But Min-soo did not feel relieved. He did not want his brother involved in any of this, not because he hated him, but because Yuzong was different, kind, clean. Someone who deserved a better life. Min-soo never said it out loud, but protecting his brother mattered more than protecting himself. That day, he went to his secret hideout. Nearly 300,000 won was hidden there. Money he earned step by step, carefully, patiently. But he was not alone. The second in command had followed him. And that was the moment everything shifted. Every move he made had purpose, and the bully who followed him made one mistake. He underestimated how far Min-soo was willing to go. The next day, the original gang leader returned from a rehabilitation center. Everyone remembered how terrifying he used to be, but when he walked into the classroom, he looked completely broken. Empty. Almost brainless. No one understood what had happened to him. And that same evening, police cars surrounded the old orphanage. Lee Min-soo had killed the one who followed him. And now he was the one being sent to a rehabilitation center. In the juvenile court, the judge was angry at Lee Min-soo as Lee Min-soo showed no signs of remorse. The judge reminded him he was there because of a murder charge. Lee Min-soo kept saying he didn't kill anyone. The judge showed Min-soo the brick with his fingerprints and blood on it, then showed the file of his other crimes too. The judge had seen many unrehabilitable people like Min-soo blaming circumstances, family, or their situation. And when things didn't go their way, they played the victim. No one starts with genuine remorse doing something terrible because they were bullied or because they took money. The world would be overflowing with corpses, so Min-soo needed to learn his lesson. The judge advised Min-soo that if someone bothered him, he should ask an adult for help. In the end, the reason he committed crimes was that he didn't trust adults. By Article 28 of the Rehabilitation and Reform Act, Min-soo was sentenced to detention in the Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. Then they left for the Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. The offenders were making noises while the two prison guards were calming them. As they reached the Juvenile Rehabilitation Center, the offenders were surprised to see girls digging there and were excited to tease them. But the jailer informed them this was the girls' juvenile center. Others were happily talking, but in a corner Min-soo was sad, thinking even if he told the truth, no one believed him. They arrived there, and while coming out of the paddy wagon, the offenders were asking too many questions. But Min-soo stepped out quietly. Suddenly, some boys came making noises. They were all shocked to see them, but the prison guards shouted, and they maintained their postures. Then, with respect, they saluted the warden. The new offenders found it strange. The military group smirked and told them to bend over. The new offenders were confused, but suddenly the boys started bending over. The offenders were shocked, but the warden pointed at them, calling them new pests. The warden ordered his boys to turn the offenders into livestock. Full of anger, one person yelled at him, but one of the boys suddenly gave him an uppercut. The group grew nervous, and then the boys started confronting them. The warden was enjoying it and declared the boys his slaves and allowed them to speak human words. The boys grew happy. Min-soo was clueless about the situation. He decided to play dead as he needed to assess the situation. The frightened offenders ran towards the guards, but the guards were smiling and ruthlessly beat them. This was likely an intimidation tactic for survival, as this was not meant to cause serious trouble. Lee Min-soo thought he did not want to cross a line he could not return from. Then the warden saw him, saying Min-soo should be disoriented, but he had already picked up a clever trick. Min-soo apologized, but the warden stomped on his head. The warden considered Min-soo a rat to keep entertaining him. The warden ordered the guards to settle things and throw Min-soo to the boys. The warden smirked as the assessment began. The scene shifted. Kang Yuzong pressed the doorbell and tried to open the door as he didn't get any response from inside. Then he took out his scissor and opened the door. He entered while thinking he and Lee Min-soo often broke into empty houses. As Min-soo would keep watch in the hallway and he would steal anything valuable inside. Until the police caught them and took them to the orphanage they had spent years breaking into homes. As a result, they could clear out an entire house of valuables in just 5 minutes. Kang Yuzong thought he hadn't done it again after those days. While entering the room, Kang Yuzong kept saying he wouldn't steal anything, but wanted answers. Yuzong was shocked to see the man tied on his bed in bad condition. Yuzong asked him about the rehabilitation center. As the man had stumbled from above and come down hard, he did not appear to have any broken bones or visible issues. Yuzong was amazed because this man used to be so fearless that the police avoided him, but now he was just like trash. Yuzong rubbed his head with his hand in anger, shouting it had been 4 weeks for him, but his brother might never get out. But the man was making weird sounds as it was a waste of time for Yuzong. But suddenly his eyes caught something on his chest. On the other side, the military group were marking offenders on their chests with grades. The warden was reading their files and thought this time it was just boring lowlifes. But then he saw something interesting and congratulated Minsu. The warden was amazed to know Minsu was more violent than he looked. He'd only a grade in this group, as Minsu was going to have a particularly delightful time there. Minsu was nervous. Outside the girls' high school, students were heading home when one girl suddenly stopped her friend mid-bite. They had spotted Yuzong. Stunned by his ridiculous looks, they rushed over to greet him. One tried to get his Instagram, but Yuzong said he didn't use it. Hearing that, they were even more infatuated. Yuzong told them he was looking for a girl named Semin. Their excitement instantly faded. They pointed at her, calling her the crazy girl, and said she had just come out of the rehabilitation center. Thinking Semin had heard them, they awkwardly lowered their heads. Yuzong walked up to her and stood in front of her. Semin asked where he was going. When he mentioned the rehabilitation center, she turned and walked away. Then Yuzong said his little brother was there. She stopped. Yuzong sighed, thinking he would try a different approach next time. But suddenly, Semin tossed him her helmet. She told him to get on. This wasn't the place to talk. They rode off together. Yuzong wanted to know why she had changed her mind and learned that her brother had also been locked up there. He asked what kind of place the rehabilitation center was. Semin stayed silent for a moment, then said it was hell. The scene shifted inside. The warden was training the offenders. It had only been 3 hours, yet they already looked like they were in hell. The next session was knee jumps. On 1, they had to scream pig. On 2, they had to shout squeal. They moved forward while yelling. Minsu was drenched in sweat, wishing it would end. The warden, enjoying the cries, noticed someone lying on the ground. The guards began pushing him around and ordered him to start over. His stomach hurt. He asked to use the restroom. They ignored him. The warden approached and offered his hand, then asked if anyone else needed the restroom. Everyone did, but Minsu hesitated. They formed a line. A guard shouted that if they didn't go now, they wouldn't go until training ended. The rest had to resume. Exhausted, Minsu was confused. Some were allowed to leave, others had to keep training. The offenders thought they could slack off. It felt suspicious. The warden asked again, calling it a rare opportunity. But unconditional kindness was like an unnamed fruit in the forest. The sweeter it looked, the more carefully it should be approached. Minsu squeaked, not wanting to continue. A guard grabbed his neck tightly, but Minsu suddenly tensed his muscles, startling himself for a moment. The guard threw him aside. The others mocked him. Minsu realized something was wrong. The guard confirmed who needed the restroom. With a disgusted smile, the warden said humans and animals both needed to relieve themselves. The rest resumed training, exhausted. The offenders laughed, thinking the others were fools. Suddenly, the warden pointed at them, calling them excuses. Everyone froze. He ordered them to become a human centipede. Minsu grew nervous. A centipede is an arthropod from the class Chilopoda. It has 15 pairs of legs as a basic feature, though some species have up to 177. A creature lower than both humans and animals. They were forced into formation. When they failed to resemble an insect, they were beaten. Then the guards sprayed water on them with pipes. 3 hours ago, they had been wild and fearless beasts. Now they were livestock, timidly trying to avoid punishment. As the day ended, they were all clueless. The warden ordered the guards to clean and feed them. The guards showed respect, and he left. Inside the rehabilitation center, they were given something to eat, barely food. The offenders were confused. No utensils. They ate off the floor. A guard ordered them to sing the song of gratitude. They sang that they were not human, but dogs and pigs. They ate what they were given. They obeyed. They even thanked them for the strict treatment and reprimands. They would not bark or bite. With reluctance, Minsu took the food and ate, thinking whether he was livestock or not, he would endure it and get out. On the other side, Yuzong stared at the rehabilitation center from the mountains. Semin said she came there every day, thinking about her brother. Yuzong said his brother was still awaiting trial and would end up there soon. Hell would be better than that place. It wasn't fit for humans. Semin couldn't sleep without pills. She had nightmares about what happened there every day. Yuzong truly cared about Lee Minsu. He came to Semin because it had been his mother's dying wish. She told him to protect Minsu, but he failed. Before it was too late, he wanted to do something. Out of everyone who got out, Semin was the only one who looked okay. There had to be a reason. Nervous, Yuzong asked how she survived. She said she pretended to be an idiot. He didn't believe her, thinking she was joking. Then she removed her wig. Yuzong froze at the sight of her shaved head. That place gathered the craziest people in the country. When tempers flared, fights broke out. It was full of unimaginable lunatics. They even stuck offenders' heads in hot oil. Yuzong felt sorry for her. Pretending to be an idiot got her released early. Semin kicked him to fix his expression. He stepped back. She explained the red mark. After the joint induction ceremony for both boys and girls centers, they were given a shower, a meal, and clothes. Then, to prevent escape, a GPS-equipped collar was attached. The clothes were loose. After receiving their items, they were assigned to a designated room. Juvenile offenders were categorized by the severity of their crimes. Room E was for simple assault. Room D for drug offenses. Room C for theft and fraud. Room B for aggravated assault, where Semin stayed. Room O was for murder or equivalent crimes. Minsu would definitely be placed in Room A. As Minsu entered, he grew nervous seeing them. They told him to introduce himself and say why he was there. It felt strange, but he answered. They mocked him for being an orphan. The long-haired offender asked why he was locked up. Minsu assumed he was the leader and said he had committed murder. His roommates went silent, confused. Minsu realized he might be the only murderer there. He thought they grouped people by similar crimes, but here severity decided power. One offender mocked the long-haired one. That's when Minsu noticed he had been sitting on the youngest boy, who was crying in exhaustion. When the boy stood up, another kicked him for speaking like a human. They'd offered Minsu a fight. But nothing changes. Weaklings get bullied. Inside or outside. If they thought they could walk over him, he would rather embrace being treated like a murderer. Juvenile rehabilitation kids had to write 10 self-reflection essays every day. Minsu didn't know what to write. He hadn't killed anyone. His roommates crumpled papers loudly. Nervous, he told them to be quiet and write properly. They laughed and treated the youngest like a pet, forcing him to write their essays. When the boy asked to use the restroom, they first demanded he speak like a human. When he did, they scolded him. Minsu was shocked. There were no human rights there. Guards treated them like livestock. In places without guards, the law of the jungle ruled. No one protected the weak. To survive, you either became strong or looked strong. Otherwise, you became someone's pet. At 8 p.m., it was shower time. Each person got 3 minutes. Only water and soap were allowed, and 50 people shared the same soap. At 9 p.m., bed check began with roll call. Everyone shouted their numbers. One said, "Woof." The guard punished him. The youngest started crying. At 10 p.m., lights out. Minsu lay awake, hearing quiet sobbing. The youngest was asking for help. That was how the first night passed. At 5:30 a.m., cleaning and roll call. Morning started early. After roll call, meals were pushed through a hole under the door. Minsu wondered why they didn't eat in the cafeteria. The others said afternoon outdoor training meant they ate outside then. This time they were given spoons. Minsu felt relieved. He asked about the poppy. He froze when he saw the youngest bent over, serving as a human table. Minsu told them to feed him properly. They laughed, claiming they cared about him. They mixed their leftovers and handed it to him. They ordered him to eat. The boy stuck out his tongue. Minsu kicked the table, telling him not to eat. Everyone stared. He scolded him by name, Moon Han-jun. The long-haired offender explained the hierarchy. Since Minsu arrived late, he had to follow the rules. If not, he had to fight his way to the top. To do that, you had to beat Han-jun. If you lost, you would become the next poppy. Minsu called it childish. Before he could finish speaking, Han-jun punched him. The others cheered, telling Minsu to fight back. He knew losing meant the bottom, but he couldn't fight back. Han-jun was crying while hitting him. The scene shifted to Penguin Orphanage. As Yuzong prepared to join the military, a woman asked if he had packed everything. He nodded and said those items were treasures for him and his brother. Director Mom said they were the biggest troublemakers in the orphanage. Especially Yuzong, he used to beat local kids like catching mice. She said the kids were so scared they wouldn't even come near the orphanage. Yuzong said she misunderstood, but it was true. He fought often. Back at the center, Han-jun kept beating Minsu while apologizing through tears. The others enjoyed it, mocking Minsu. It wasn't Yuzong the kids had feared. Yuzong was better at fighting. The truly terrifying one was Minsu. When Minsu loses his mind, no one can stop him. Minsu punched one of his roommates, saying they were all going to become poopies. Another kicked him from behind, and he fell to the ground. They reminded him this was Room A, and people here thought they were tough. They said they were going easy on him because he was an abandoned orphan. When one of them insulted his mother, Minsu shoved a brush into his mouth. The others started attacking Minsu for that, saying they would seriously harm him. Suddenly, they stopped. Minsu, furious, sternly asked if they had ever caused someone's death before. On the other side, someone said he would abolish the juvenile law. If words did not work, they would get hit. He recalled something and struck a golf ball. The man, surrounded by his guards, said nobody had shown up to take his spot. If only he had taken Hanmansu down like this. His guards clapped. It was a clean shot. He was a congressman. Kang Yuzong fell to his knees. He was thinking of enlisting in the military early, resolving the juvenile issues now, which would benefit the congressman's political career. Yuzong's father understood he was pretending to care about him and told him to speak properly. Angrily preparing another shot, he said Yuzong was actually doing it for his younger brother. Even if he enlisted now, there was no guarantee he would be assigned to the Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. For Yuzong, only his father could make that happen. But his father was not ready to clean up the mess he had made. He said politics was give and take and asked Yuzong if he could make him president. Back in the room, one offender grabbed Minsu and called for the others to rush at him. He struck him. Minsu faked death, and they grew nervous. Suddenly, Minsu kicked his back and shoved the rod into another's mouth. The long-haired one stepped forward and said Minsu's trigger words were mom and abandoned. He manipulated him, saying it would be heartbreaking if his mother knew the son she abandoned had become a murderer. Minsu tried to attack, but the long-haired guy grabbed his hand. Minsu demanded an apology. Suddenly, he let go and Minsu was confused. The long-haired guy walked away saying Minsu had started it. When Minsu looked back, the guards were there. They beat Minsu and ordered the others to stand against the wall. The long-haired guy said Minsu had acted aggressively toward the others in the room and caused trouble, and that he would include the details in the report. They acted as if they had been sitting quietly, while Minsu caused chaos alone. The guards dragged Minsu outside and locked him in solitary confinement for 15 days. Solitary confinement, also known as the punishment room, was where troublemakers were isolated for a set period. The days spent there were not counted toward overall detention time. Minsu found it nice to be alone there until a guard informed him he had to maintain a kneeling posture until sleep under constant surveillance. Even the freedom to move his hands and feet was taken away. Minsu felt relieved after using the restroom, but there was no toilet paper. Someone told him it was behind him. He saw a tap and was shocked. He had to use his hand to clean himself. When they brought his meal, they did not untie his arms to let him eat. Even in solitary, reflection letters had to be written. Because he had been sent there, Minsu had to write twice as much. Everyone there had issues, but the biggest problem was the long-haired guy. He needed to be taken down. Minsu fell asleep and saw himself and his brother standing before a burning house. He suddenly woke up. He thought it was because of the environment, but the bad memories kept surfacing in his dreams. If he fell asleep again, he felt the nightmare would return. In the end, he spent the night wide awake. After 16 days, Minsu returned to his assigned room. He saw his roommates apologizing. Misunderstanding, he accepted it and said he needed one from Sejin too. Sejin kicked him. They grabbed him, forced water into his mouth, and dragged him to the toilet. Someone seemed more eager to see him than Sejin. The guy urinated on him. Then someone entered. Sejin said they were doing it with permission. The new warden said he would deal with their punishment later. He offered his hand. When Minsu looked up, he was shocked, but took it. It was Yuzong. Yuzong smiled at Minsu. The scene shifted to the past. Yuzong's father was singing a patriotic song for a soldier. Hearing it, the soldier cried. Afterward, he questioned Yuzong's father, saying that making his son a soldier by bypassing proper procedures was a luxury. Other politicians manipulated documents to keep their children out of the military, fabricating mental illnesses and pulling ridiculous stunts. Yuzong's father said it was better to send the kids to the military quickly than to create fake heroic stories. The soldier listed Yuzong, and the ROK army was confused to see him there. Then they sang the army song. Yuzong was ready to enlist immediately. He had prepared everything to save his brother. While Minsu awaited trial, he gathered intel from other juvenile inmates. Yuzong confirmed the reality. The correctional facility was hell. That was why he came there with resolve. Even one day sooner, he would pull Minsu out of that hell. The scene shifted back to the present. If Minsu did as Yuzong said, he would be free in no time. The plan was flawless. If they followed it, everything would work. But Minsu did not listen. Yuzong's perfect plan fell apart from the beginning. The offenders thought Yuzong was young and had to follow the rules. They surrounded him. The room's rule was to fight, and that night Yuzong followed it. On the other side, Minsu attacked Sejin, but Sejin dodged and counterattacked, saying Minsu could not even keep his balance. Sejin thought the warden had restrained everyone in such a short time. Yuzong was someone Sejin had never encountered before. Then Minsu kicked him. Minsu was confident, but Sejin planned to play it cool and move on, calling Minsu a puppy. Minsu tried to punch, but Sejin struck with his elbow. Minsu was shocked. Sejin kicked him down. He was ridiculously strong. Minsu did not give up. He kicked again, but Sejin blocked it with his hand. Since Hyunjun did not know his place and acted up, he had become their puppy. Minsu could not let himself be pushed down. He grabbed Sejin's collar and tried to punch again. There was no way he was losing this easily. But Sejin attacked back. Minsu was beaten by the guide who had insulted his mother, and he could not land a single hit. Every time Sejin struck him, his face flashed before Minsu's eyes. Yuzong confirmed Minsu was alive. He let out a sigh of relief and carried him on his back to solitary confinement. A disturbance had been caused, so Minsu had to be punished. Sejin wanted Yuzong to fight him, but Yuzong told him she didn't want you to fight. Sejin grew confused. Inside solitary, Minsu opened his eyes after a long unconsciousness. He decided that next time he would rip out Sejin's hair, but he forgot something important. His stomach hurt and no water came from the tap. He thought he could not wash his hands after wiping himself. Someone outside threw the toilet paper, saying the tap worked on a timer and would run again in the evening. Minsu wondered why his hands were not restrained this time. Suddenly, he remembered his brother had come as the new warden. He punched the door and scolded Yuzong. He began to cry, saying Yuzong had found a good family and should live happily. He did not want Yuzong to ruin his life over a killer. If Yuzong got stuck there with him, he would feel guilty. Yuzong told Minsu he believed him. Minsu did not kill anyone because he was his brother. Hearing sniffling, Yuzong thought Minsu was crying. If everything went as planned, Minsu could get out. Minsu requested one more fight with Sejin. At first, Yuzong disagreed, but when he learned Sejin had insulted Minsu's mother, he agreed. He said he would teach Minsu how to win, but if Minsu lost again to Sejin, he said he would make Minsu pay himself. There were 15 days left in solitary confinement. It was too short to build physical strength. That was why, from now on, Minsu would learn only one thing: how to beat Sejin. While releasing him from solitary confinement, Yuzong told Minsu he would win if he had memorized the tactics. Entering the assigned room, Minsu told Yuzong to trust him. His roommates welcomed him, saying solitary had made him tougher, and they wanted to test that theory. Minsu reminded them he would turn them all into poppies, then thought he should become one himself. The pose of submission seemed like the fastest way. To win, he had to endure their attacks and wait for the perfect opportunity. By holding on and waiting, the chance would come. That was his masterstroke. Minsu was exhausted but stood up whenever he could not take it anymore. They mocked him as always, yet he kept recalling that he only had to endure 5 days and Yuzong would handle the room. As warden, he controlled everything during lessons. Minsu challenged them again to a rematch. They injured him badly. The second time, he did all the cleaning with Han-jun. One roommate even rode on Hyun-jun's back. Day 3, they were writing essays. Day 4, during the meal, Hyun-jun could not eat, but Minsu overacted, thinking it would all end tomorrow. Inside the toilet, Minsu vomited everything. He knew he would feel weak on an empty stomach, so Hyun-jun secretly gave him a mini cake he had bought with his allowance and told him to keep it quiet. Minsu was amazed and fell silent. Later, the offenders threw 2 projectiles. Minsu and Han-jun caught them and played along, Minsu performing the poppy role well, but they were unsure about Hyun-jun. While chasing a projectile, Hyun-jun fell onto the cooking uniters. They grew angry, but Hyun-jun nervously invited them to join the frisbee game. Sejin was lying on the ground, thinking about the new warden's words. A voice interrupted him. He opened his eyes and saw the cooking uniters stepping on his poppy. They said Sejin should take proper care of his poppy since he had attacked them first. They demanded an apology and told him to take his dog back. Sejin did not want to escalate things. He refused to heat it up unnecessarily and told them to keep it reasonable. That angered them, and they began mistreating Han-jun for the other offenders. Starting a major dispute over a poppy was too much. Minsu expected the guards to intervene, but realized they ignored small fights and let them handle it. Hearing Han-jun beg reminded Minsu of earlier moments and of Yuzong's plan. Minsu stepped forward. The cooking uniters said they would borrow Han-jun for a few days. Suddenly, a projectile hit one of them and knocked him back. Everyone was shocked. It was Minsu. He said they came there after screwing around outside, so they were just continuing the same crap inside. Minsu stood up for Hyun-jun. They were treated like pigs. Their pride was gone, their dignity trampled, their spirits crushed. No matter how bad it got, they did not even feel embarrassed when their dog was beaten by another dog. Sejin stepped in and said Minsu should not have interfered. A cooking uniter put a hand on Sejin's shoulder and said they would inform their leader that war was being declared. Sejin struck him with his elbow and told him to go ahead, but first he had to settle things with the rebel. Everyone stared. Minsu had broken the plan again despite all his effort. The offenders laughed and urged Sejin to crush him. There was no avoiding the mess now, but Minsu would keep the other promise he had made. Sejin stepped forward, saying Minsu must be itching to get beaten again. Minsu proposed a bet: whoever won the fight would become the room leader. Minsu was confident he would win. In the juvenile rehabilitation facility classroom, the children were minors, so they attended basic classes. During class, all authority belonged to the warden. Yuzong's plan, Phase 1, was to make Minsu the room leader. Today, Minsu would defeat Sejin and take that position. Yuzong had arranged the environment perfectly so Minsu could win. The stage was ready. It was time for the actors to enter. When they did not arrive, Yuzong looked out the window. He saw Minsu and Sejin already fighting, with the offenders cheering for Sejin. They mocked Minsu because he could not land a single hit. Yuzong sighed, grabbed the wall, and shouted, Minsu recalled the steps. Start with a hook, then a liver punch, then an uppercut, mid-kick, low kick, and finally a straight punch. He was shocked. Yuzong had never trained seriously. He had only mimicked a few moves. It was not enough to beat Sejin, but Yuzong had said Sejin fought well for someone untrained. That was natural talent. His moves looked flashy but lacked substance. There was no flow. Sejin could never beat someone properly trained. Yet Minsu could not land a single punch. He was only getting beaten. Yuzong had told him to fight inside the classroom. If Minsu kept dodging, Sejin would eventually be cornered. The classroom had plenty of corners. Once Sejin was trapped, the full combination would land. Back to the fight, blood streamed from Minsu's nose. There were no walls nearby. Yuzong ran toward them, ready to punish Minsu. Too many people blocked his view. He shouted for them to stop. Popcorn hit his face. The head warden stood there enjoying the scene. Yuzong saluted and said he was about to stop it. The warden asked if Yuzong liked watching a kingdom of beasts. He spoke about wildlife shows, rats appearing, hungry snakes hunting them. A snake eating a rat was nature's order. In the same way, they should not interfere. It was natural. Besides, watching fights was fun. Minsu tried again. He threw a hook. Sejin dodged and punched him. Minsu flew back. 2, Minsu shouted. Sejin mocked him, asking if he was learning math. Minsu attempted step 3. Yuzong grew worried. Minsu's reach was short. He had no strategy. His stamina was gone. There was no wall to complete the combination. All he could do was endure. Sejin kicked him into the offenders. Yuzong felt embarrassed. If this continued, Minsu would lose like before. Minsu thought that if he lost, he would surrender to avoid further pain. The offenders shoved him back into the fight, cheering for his victory, but if he lost, he would face them instead. Sejin tried to insult him. Minsu smirked. Sejin was confused. Minsu smiled. He had just remembered a way to land his full combination. The offenders wanted Minsu to finish it quickly. Sejin also wanted it over. The time for the walk was almost up. Minsu finally understood how to use the combination. He remembered asking Yuzong what to do if he could not corner Sejin. Yuzong had said Sejin would never willingly trap himself, so Minsu had to bait him into coming closer. Minsu doubted it would work. Yuzong had given him a magic word, one that would make Sejin lose composure and charge. Is Gesemin pretty? Sejin exploded and threw a punch. Minsu countered. Sejin tried to step back to dodge, but the crowd grabbed him. The space behind him was blocked. Minsu attacked. There was no room to escape. Sejin tried to strike first, but the offenders trapped his arm. Minsu unleashed the full combination he had learned from Yuzong. Using the crowd as walls, he struck again and again. Sejin fell. He tried another approach, but Minsu landed a middle kick. To Sejin, Minsu seemed bigger than before. Sejin swung wildly, but random punches could not touch Minsu. Minsu kept attacking and demanded an apology. Finally, he landed a straight punch. Sejin hit the ground. Everyone was stunned. The head warden commented that the animal kingdom was entertaining, a rat defeating a snake. Minsu had been scheming since he arrived, and now he was even entertaining in a fight. Yuzong lifted Sejin to take him to solitary confinement. As he passed Minsu, he asked who he took after to be so disobedient. Minsu took after his brother. Phase 2 of the plan would begin. Later, Yuzong explained everything to Gesemin. Her brother had ended up in solitary. That was not part of the plan. Things had gone off track. Semin stared at Yuzong and scolded him for interfering. Yuzong grew angry after seeing Semin's art. Semin said he should not feel sorry for her brother. He ended up there because he deserved it. But now she felt Yuzong owed her an apology instead. She warned him that he was in trouble because Minsu had gotten involved with the cooking group. It seemed he had hit someone with a trash can lid. Semin used to be part of the female facility's cooking group. Sometimes they interacted with the male facility's cooking group. They were tight-knit. If someone messed with one of them, they would gang up on Yuzong's brother one by one. And among them, there was one person Yuzong needed to be especially careful about. The cooking unit leader handed Minsu his meal and asked if he was Minsu. He nodded. The leader piled extra food onto his tray. Minsu grew nervous. He had messed with their guys, so he deserved this and would regret crossing the cooking team. Minsu tried to confuse him, saying his name was Minsu, but someone else with the same name and caused trouble. The team members pointed him out. He was the one. And now he was trying to run. Elsewhere, at a summit meeting, President Han Mansu welcomed the attendees. 3 representatives from different parties joined. Han Mansu shook their hands. And it was Kang, Yuzong's father. They had been rivals in the presidential race, but now, for the country's sake, Han Mansu told Kang to work hard as his subordinate and patted him on the butt in front of the entire nation. Kang burned with anger. Later, he punched a heavy bag while thinking of Mansu. Yuzong entered and said it would be easy to bring President Mansu down. All they needed to do was destroy his political foundation, the Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. Kang asked about the progress. What Yuzong had seen inside was not the facility the president had promoted to the public. It pushed children into acting aggressively toward each other. Cruel behavior was common. Conflicts were ignored for amusement. It was not rehabilitation. It was hell. Kang clapped. The center was Mansu's weak point, but that alone was not enough. Juvenile offenders were still perpetrators. Victims wanted them to suffer. All Mansu had to do was promise future improvements. Yuzong needed something bigger from inside. Back at the facility, everyone maintained the crab posture and exhaustion. The warden ordered crab soup for the day. A guard said he would inform the cooking team. Minsu had hit his limit. Yuzong told him to step out. Minsu felt relieved until he was ordered into the lobster pose instead. Yuzong apologized. If only Minsu were excused, it would look suspicious, he explained Phase 2. The facility operated on a reward and penalty point system. With 100 reward points, Minsu could be reviewed for parole. More penalty points delayed the review. Right now, Minsu was at -50 because of 2 solitary confinements and 1 major fight. He had never earned a single reward point. When Minsu asked how to earn them, Yuzong said the fastest way was to volunteer as a helper for the cooking team. Minsu remembered the cooking leader and panicked. He said he wouldn't survive if he went there. He told Yuzong to end his suffering instead. A guard passed by and Minsu resumed his posture. He could do anything, except join the cooking team. Yuzong had to accept it and said he would find another way. Afternoon sunlight filtered gently through the curtains. Leaves rustled. Birds chirped. It was peaceful nap time. After overexerting himself that morning, Minsu felt extremely sleepy. Noise disturbed him. He shouted that he wanted to sleep, but his roommates were cleaning. Hyunjun happily announced the cleaning was done. Minsu had earned 1 reward point. At this rate, reaching 100 would take forever. The guards checked the cleaning. Minsu saluted and confirmed it was complete. A guard then told him he was heading to the next location alone. Minsu smiled, thinking Yuzong was the best. But this was not what he had agreed to. Yuzong had promised not to send him to the cooking team. Yet that was exactly where he was being sent. Jang Dubo dreamed of becoming Korea's top chef. His right hand was trained to wield a 3-kilogram cast iron pan and flip 2 kilograms of food with ease. His left hand was optimized for delicate work. Criticizing his cooking was an insult, but here he had to endure it. There was no real culinary talent to match his. His team burned the pasta while trying to make oil. They ruined the soup. Tears welled in Dubo's eyes. He wanted to scold them but held back. Chef came from Chief, the leader of the tribe. He wanted to tear them apart. But they were still his tribe. Minsu was different. He had offended Dubo's tribe. In the name of culinary education, he would be ripped apart. Then Dubo saw Minsu cook, like an expert. He raised his arms, lifted Minsu, and spun him around. Minsu had learned cooking at the orphanage. Dubo cried with joy. He had found treasure for the cooking team. Later, some cooking uniters ate the supply food. They had planned to make Dubo and Minsu fight, but Dubo clung to Minsu instead. So they decided to ruin Minsu's dish by mixing trash into it. They were about to act, then froze. Yuzong had discovered why supplies kept disappearing. He told them they would face consequences. One protested it was cooking territory. Yuzong beat them. He was worried because Minsu had refused the cooking team, but he had not been the one to send him there. In the warden's office, guards arrived. The warden smiled, expecting news of a fight. Instead, he said today's menu was his favorite, omelette rice. The guards even sang to make it taste better. The warden tasted it. In the cafeteria, everyone prepared for a special day that came once a month. They grated a new bar of soap, added twice the amount of olive oil, heated with a double boiler mixed in ground basil powder and squeezed in tangerine juice for vitamin E. After stirring and cooling, it became their homemade hair wax. They used it because they could not get wax inside. Minsu asked what made the day special. It was ingredient delivery day. Once a month, the cafeteria received supplies and they shared them with the female correctional facility's cooking team. A girl struggled to lift a box, a boy helped her. Dubo carried several boxes at once. The girl smiled brightly. Other girls approached Minsu and called him cute. Dubo thought Minsu was slacking and flirting. Then a girl called Dubo from behind and handed him a letter. He held it carefully, amazed. She left. Dubo imagined marrying her, named 5 children in his head, and even teared up. When he opened the letter, it was addressed to the leader of Group A. Dubo's expression changed. Minsu, exhausted from carrying boxes, was called over. Dubo asked if he was the leader and what November 22 meant. Minsu had no idea. Seeing Dubo's terrifying look, Minsu grew nervous. Dubo attacked him, shouting that he had stolen his wife. Minsu was shocked. It all happened suddenly. When Dubo punched, Minsu barely dodged. If he hadn't, his head would have been smashed open. Dubo thought Minsu acted nice to lower his guard and then hit him from behind. Minsu kicked him, but Dubo grabbed his leg and slammed him to the ground. Furious, thinking Minsu took his imagined wife, Dubo attacked again. Minsu tried to punch back but couldn't reach him because of Dubo's long arms. He took a heavy left punch while his right hand was restrained. Dubo attacked again, saying he'd take Sogyum on a date. Minsu was cornered. Dubo threw another punch, but this time Minsu dodged. He grabbed Dubo's waist, saying any girl would hate going out with him. Minsu tried to switch positions and land a combination, but Dubo didn't budge. Dubo grabbed his face and lifted him. Knowing he couldn't dodge, Minsu threw a flower packet. On the other side, the girls were checking ingredients and found a box from the boys' correctional facility. They decided to return it. One girl picked it up and said she'd take it over. Back to the fight, Minsu started running. Dubo grew exhausted chasing him, then told Minsu to come closer and he'd kill him gently. Minsu threw eggs at him. The smell like chicken manure made Dubo furious. He hurled utensils at Minsu, who kept dodging. Dubo then threw an oil pan at him, just as the girl opened the door. Dubo froze, realizing the flying oil was headed straight toward her. Minsu ran to her and protected her when the container slipped and poured onto him. Yuzong went to the hospital feeling tense. He had come to protect Minsu. He couldn't let him get hurt as Semin. The nurse told him Minsu was on the bunk. When Yuzong pulled the curtain, he froze. A skeleton lay on the bed. Minsu suddenly stepped out from behind it. It was a prank. He was lucky the oil wasn't hot, or he might actually become a skeleton. Yuzong's expression turned terrifying. Minsu grew nervous, but Yuzong pulled him into a hug, relieved he was safe. The nurse scolded Minsu for playing with her skeleton. Minsu still insisted on volunteering for kitchen duty, the fastest way to earn points. He asked Yuzong to help him and to teach him how to beat Dubo. Yuzong brushed his hair back. The warden was pleased to see offenders exercising and asked about it. Yuzong explained it was a training exercise for those who dared challenge authority, called dung beetle training. The warden was impressed with Sergeant Kang. The rocks they used were brought from the mountain behind them. Minsu was exhausted and frustrated. Yuzong could have taught him normally. Yuzong said they were done for the day. Minsu felt confident he could now fight Dubo. Yuzong refused and ordered him to roll the rock alone. Minsu struggled but managed to roll it. Just as he was doing well, Yuzong stopped him. He still wasn't ready to fight Dubo. Now he had to push a three-legged rock, and he did that too. Minsu shouted that he'd die at this rate. Beating someone in a completely different weight class wasn't easy. If Minsu could move it even slightly, he could win. He was shocked. Could anyone even move it? In solitary confinement, a week had passed since Sejin was locked in. He still couldn't understand why he lost. Minsu hadn't even landed a punch. It happened because Sejin let his guard down. If they fought again, he believed he'd win. Sitting on the toilet, Sejin realized he was out of toilet paper and the water wasn't running. He had only one option. He cut his sleeve. Afterward, he wondered what he'd use next time. Suddenly, someone tossed in toilet paper and told him to stop using random things and clean up properly. Yuzong had something to discuss and asked to enter. When he stepped inside, Sejin wasn't there. Suddenly, Sejin attacked from behind. He wanted to know how Yuzong knew his sister. Yuzong dodged and countered. Sejin expected him to be strong, but not this strong. Yuzong covered Sejin's mouth and raised his fist. Sejin tensed. Instead of striking, Yuzong called Semin and told Sejin to ask his sister himself. Semin, at an obesity clinic, answered the call and asked Yuzong if he had met Sejin. Sejin grew nervous when he heard Semin's voice. He asked if she had been released from the women's correctional facility. Semin told Yuzong to cover his ears. She had something important to say. Then she scolded Sejin harshly. He fell silent, weighed down by her words. On the other side, Minsu struggled to move the rock. There were many strong offenders, but Dubo was considered the strongest. If anyone was hit by his right arm, it was game over. They had all seen Changsu get wrecked by that punch. Minsu would end up the same. Hearing this, Minsu forced himself to push harder. Back in solitary, Semin told Sejin he couldn't even recognize someone trying to help him. She reminded him how much she had suffered to find someone willing to stand by him. Sejin gave no answers, and then he hung up. Semin was shocked. She realized she hadn't told him to be careful. Just then, a nurse informed her the doctor was waiting. Yuzong asked Sejin why he acted this way. For Sejin, everything felt exhausting. He understood now that his sister and Yuzong were on the same side. Then he asked Yuzong if he was teaching Minsu how to fight, and demanded to be taught too, promising to follow every order. In the cafeteria, the cooking unit kept getting punished because the food kept burning. At this rate, they would be kicked out of the kitchen team. Ever since Minsu fought Dubo, Dubo had gone completely insane. Suddenly, Minsu arrived, excited. Dubo's face turned terrifying as he called out Minsu's name and charged at him. Minsu stopped him with words, saying he knew why Dubo wasn't popular with women. He stepped closer and said it was because he was ugly as hell. The insult burned. The cooking unit stared in shock at Minsu's provocation. Furious, Dubo ran to kill him. Minsu ran, still provoking him. Dubo chased until he grew exhausted. When he finally reached him and raised his hand, Minsu blocked with the box. Dubo fell for the same trick again. Minsu tried to strike, saying without his right hand, Dubo was nothing. Dubo punched him. Blood streamed from Minsu's nose, but he grabbed Dubo's arm. Dubo lifted his hand with Minsu still holding on. Then Minsu swiftly raised his own hand toward him. At Gangyo, the director sat at the table, the atmosphere calm. As a special event, Yuzong was in charge of cooking. He served steamed fish made from semi-dried Alaska pollock and prepared a special drink called Hybrid Taste Star. When the director drank it, he felt like heaven, the freshness of peach blended with the sweetness of grape. He enjoyed the dinner show. Back at the cafeteria, Minsu finally stopped running. Dubo pulled his arm free and tried to attack, but couldn't. His arm was caught by Minsu's. Minsu struck. Dubo was shocked by his grappling. He yanked his arm back and attacked again. In the past, Minsu had said he could corner Dubo like Sejin. Yuzong had warned him to think before speaking. The weight gap between Sejin and Minsu was only 1 level, that's why cornering worked. But between Minsu and Dubo, it was 3 levels. Minsu should be praying not to get cornered. Minsu had thought Yuzong would raise his weight class to match Dubo's, but that wasn't possible quickly. Instead, Yuzong asked how he moved stones heavier than himself. The answer was leverage. Human limbs move by the same principle. If Minsu became the lever, he could move Dubo. Dubo was stunned. Minsu wasn't budging. Then Minsu punched him and kept attacking. At the table, Yuzong asked the director if he was enjoying the story. The director found it entertaining but predictable. Dubo showed no pain. Those small fists couldn't beat a giant. Minsu, meanwhile, looked exhausted. The weight difference couldn't be ignored. Yuzong placed a bet on Minsu. Confident, the director agreed. Yuzong understood the director's logic. Face attacks shouldn't work across weight classes, but striking arts protect the face and hands for a reason. The head is the most vulnerable part of the body: eyes, nose, temples, ears, and especially the jaw. A hit to the jaw shakes the brain and inner ear, disrupting balance. Weight matters in amateur fights, but technique prevails. At last, Minsu landed a clean punch. Dubo remembered so young, his imagined marriage, his imagined children, and then lost consciousness. He collapsed. The fight was over. Everyone was stunned. Even the director couldn't believe it. He asked Yuzong how he knew Minsu would win. Yuzong said it was just a hunch. The warden walked away, telling him to think about his prize. Minsu exhaled in relief, then noticed a letter. It was for Sejin. The others gasped and told him Dubo thought the letter was his and swore to ruin him over it. Minsu burned with anger. All that suffering happened because Dubo mistakenly believed he had received Sejin's letter. He tried to rush at Dubo, but the others stopped him. In the restricted area, guards stood at the door. Word spread that candidate selection had been disrupted. Hang Sejin and Dubo were both beaten. Dubo had been the strongest in Gangyo. Now 2 candidates were gone. Rumors circled about the remaining names. The leader of an MZ gang from Daejeon-dong, construction supervisor Lee Kangman, and maintenance team member Ha Sung-kyo. As they discussed the list, they asked Jisoo to choose a candidate. He planned to pass, but his curiosity was stirred. He nominated Lee Min-soo. Because of the fight, Dubo was sent to solitary confinement. That gave Min-soo the chance to run the store, but as a condition, he still had to work in the kitchen. Behind him, the cooking uniters created chaos, ruining the rice pot, making something like porridge, and overboiling the kettle. Min-soo grew furious. While collecting monthly ingredients, the girls greeted them. Min-soo felt dull as the uniters started messing up again. Someone called his name. It was the girl he had saved. She thanked him. For Min-soo, it was no big deal. She handed him a letter. Min-soo misunderstood and told her to give it directly to Sejin. After she left, he realized it was for him. When he saw his name on it, Min-soo turned red. He instantly imagined a future with her. In the letter, she wrote that a few days ago, when the oil was about to pour on her, she thought everything was over, but Min-soo saved her. She already knew who he was. The first time she saw him was the day he fought Sejin while she was taking a walk after eating. She fell for his crazy eyes. It reminded her of a honey badger. Since then, she had held her breath for him. She even wrote what she did to give him the letter. She straightened her hair, applied makeup, and gathered the courage to confess. Sarah asked if she looked pretty and told Min-soo to answer her the next time they met. His roommates started mocking him. Min-soo felt confused, happy, but overwhelmed. He told them to read it themselves. The letter was filled with sincere love. Outside the warden's office, Yuzong knocked and saluted, arriving in a hurry after learning he was called. The warden noted it had been 3 months since Yuzong was assigned there. He had passed early admission to the Korean Military Academy and the sergeant exam at lightning speed, graduating top of his class. The warden questioned why someone that talented ended up at a rehabilitation center. Yuzong replied he would work harder for the warden and the country. In truth, he needed the warden's trust to find a way to raise Min-soo's points. Then the warden mentioned something interesting he saw on CCTV. Yuzong and Min-soo were very close. He asked about their relationship. In the shower room, Min-soo was bathing when he noticed the soap had shrunk to almost nothing. Suddenly, someone handed him a bottle. Minsu looked at it in shock. It was shampoo. He asked the man how he managed to bring shampoo into the rehabilitation center. To get Minsu out of the correctional school, they must hide the fact that they are brothers. Since Yuzong was adopted, no one knows they are siblings. Yuzong was nervous. The warden asked again. Yuzong couldn't let him find out. He needed an excuse. The warden guessed it could be a student and a teacher. He said he saw everything. Yuzong teaching Minsu how to fight, even making a bet because he knew his student would win. Yuzong felt relieved. The warden warned him not to get too close to the trash. Yuzong walked away, saying he would prepare for the outdoor activity. As things were getting interesting, the warden called someone and ordered him to dig into Kang Hase's background. He felt they would find something. On the other side, Sejin recalled his sister's words. It was a relief she had managed to escape from the correctional school. Then Sejin heard noises. It was Dubo, crying in solitary confinement. Yuzong entered and told Dubo this happened because of him. While crying, Dubo said Minsu stole his wife and children. Yuzong cleared up the misunderstanding. Dubo felt sorry, but then grew furious at Sejin. Yuzong showed Dubo a picture of Semin and Sejin. Dubo recognized Semin as the kitchen goddess and was confused to see Sejin beside her. He misunderstood again and started crying. His mood changed when Yuzong explained they were siblings. Dubo then called Sejin his brother-in-law. Hearing this, Sejin got angry and started shouting. Dubo said that since they would soon be family, he would cook Sejin delicious food. They kept shouting at each other. Yuzong let out a sigh. But Yuzong had something bigger to investigate, the dark secret of this correctional facility that the director was hiding. To take down the president, he needed a greater weakness. Even as a prison officer, he couldn't access the restricted area. Then suddenly, Yuzong saw a wounded man being carried on a stretcher. He was shocked. The man was wearing a red prison uniform. Yuzong realized he needed to investigate further. On the other side, Minsu thanked a man for lending him shampoo. But for a moment, he grew nervous. The man was wearing a red prison uniform, and he had no rank symbol. Inside solitary confinement, Dubo and Sejin were talking. Sejin admitted he lost to Minsu because he got careless, while Minsu came fully prepared with a strategy. Dubo had planned a toy with Minsu, but realized he had walked straight into his trap. Sejin said it had drawn attention to Minsu. Dubo told him Minsu convinced the kitchen staff to drive a wedge between them and push him as the candidate instead. Sejin said he is the candidate and he will prove himself and rise to the top. He will repay that humiliation without fail. On the other side, the man introduced himself as Jisoo. He recognized Minsu, but Minsu had no idea how Jisoo knew him. Jisoo touched Minsu's head and said it was smaller than he thought. Minsu said he would let it slide since Jisoo lent him shampoo. Jisoo then said he came to meet Minsu, but next time, Minsu would come to meet him, and it wouldn't be easy. As he walked away, Jisoo said he would be waiting. Minsu was left confused. Later, the cooking unitors put fish into the sacred ramen, thinking it would taste better. Minsu told them to eat it, but everyone froze. He asked why, then sensed someone behind him. He grew nervous, thinking Dubo was about to attack. When he turned around, Dubo was apologizing. He cried, admitting he had misunderstood everything. Minsu forgave him and invited him to eat ramen together. That only made Dubo more emotional. The kitchen uniters happily said Minsu received another confession letter. Suddenly, Dubo's mood shifted, and he ran toward Minsu. Minsu was excited because he planned to give Sarah a reply tomorrow, but it turned out to be volunteer work day instead. Minsu started crying while the cooking uniters tried to calm him down. Suddenly, a gang arrived. They began talking nonsense, making everyone furious. One of them shouted at the group for treating their boss badly. Then he lifted Minsu, mocking how weak he looked. A guard stepped in and stopped them. One group member pointed at Minsu's team and claimed they started the argument. Minsu's roommate responded, saying the other group had begun it. The guard punched him. Minsu was shocked as the guard kept hitting him without reason. The gang laughed while the boy begged the guard to stop. Then Yuzong arrived and grabbed the guard's hand. The guard claimed the kids were about to fight, and he got carried away. They later boarded the bus. Yuzong asked Wang Hyuk if he was okay to go on volunteer work. Yuzong let out a sigh and asked Minsu if he was about to hit the guard. Minsu smiled and told him to trust him. Inside the bus, Yanjun was cheerful, but Minsu noticed a bad smell. It was coming from the recent gang's feet. Minsu told them to move their feet. The leader said if they had a problem, they should fight his guys. Someone added that if Sejin showed up, they wouldn't stand a chance. Minsu was shocked. Sejin stepped onto the bus. He ordered them to move their feet, and they quickly obeyed. Minsu asked if today was his release from solitary. The two of them sat down. This volunteer work was about to get far more exciting. They reached their destination. A man welcomed them and said he hoped the volunteering would bring positive change to the reform school kids. Yuzong smiled, believing the kids could help the elders. Women distributed drinks. Everyone was excited to taste cola after a long time. One boy stared at a woman in shock. When the others turned, they saw a group of grandmothers. There wasn't a single young woman. They looked disappointed. Then the boy pointed again. When Sejin looked, it was his sister Semin. Semin got angry. The kids began washing the elders' feet while the guard took pictures. Minsu let out a sigh. An old man asked if Minsu would wash his feet too. Minsu agreed. Thinking the grandpa must have suffered a lot, his feet were badly damaged. Minsu carefully washed between the toes, removing the dead skin. He looked up and asked if it felt refreshing. Instead of gratitude, he saw the gang leader. The leader wiped his feet on Minsu's hair and coldly told him to work under him as a foot washer. Minsu was furious, but Hyunjun held him back as the guard kept taking pictures. The gang mocked him. Minsu forced himself to calm down. Outside, Semin went for a walk with a grandpa. Sejin was there too. While others volunteered, Sejin slacked off. He asked Semin how she ended up in reform school for confronting an inappropriate old man, yet now she was helping elders. Semin said she regretted it. They should have reported him for inappropriate behavior instead. They got involved and ended up here. Besides, it was that man who was wrong, not all old people. Then she asked Sejin what kind of old man he would become. Sejin was confused. It was cold, so Semin went inside with the grandma and told him to think about it. The cooking team handed out meals. The kids served the grandpas. Minsu was feeding an old woman when someone called him from behind. He turned and saw another old woman who was hungry, but the gang leader wasn't giving her food. Minsu shouted at him. Suddenly, someone poured soup over Minsu's head. They brushed it off as an accident. Minsu tried to fight, but his roommates held him back. The guard came again to take pictures. The gang laughed, saying they were scared of a wing for no reason. Their leader said money wins in the end. In reform school, rankings weren't about fighting skills, but the severity of the crime. The more serious the crime, the stronger the fighter. They were in C-Wing for fraud, so they weren't fighters. He pointed out a CEO on the news. A CEO doesn't need to fight. Money brings bodyguards, police, even the law to protect him. They would buy strength with money because, as fraudsters, they had plenty of it. His gang cheered. Inside the bathroom, some offenders turned on the hot water and started smoking. Behind them, an old man was suffering as the water burned him. Wang Hyuk entered to clean the bathhouse. When he opened the door, he saw the old man in danger and rushed to save him. The offenders showed him a cigarette pack, thinking he was a guard. Wang Hyuk shouted that the heat could cause the old man cardiac arrest. One person struck him forcefully. The others made fun of him. Wang Hyuk resisted. His own teammates were shocked. Later, Minsu and Wang Hyuk stared nervously at something. Wang Hyuk covered in wounds. On the other side, Minsu asked Yuzong for a favor. Yuzong was embarrassed, saying Minsu couldn't hold back even for a while. If they caused trouble here, it would be serious. Minsu left, saying he expected more from his brother. Suddenly, the guard approached. He said it felt strange. Yuzong always treated Minsu like a kang. Then he directly asked Yuzong about their relationship. The guard pointed at Yuzong as it seemed like they knew each other before. Suddenly, Sejin arrived and called Yuzong by his name and said the guys were causing trouble again. Yuzong told the guard that since they've been treating these punks too leniently, they keep calling him Hyun. The guard said this place was turning into a full-on gang school. The guard let this slide this time, but if he sees Yuzong getting too friendly with the trash again, he'll report it to the higher-ups. Yuzong said he will be careful. Somehow, Yuzong managed to dodge it. At this rate, he'll be exposed in no time. Minsu thanked Sejin. Minsu got him wrong. Sejin wasn't helping him. Sejin was acting cocky in front of the leader. Burning with anger, Sejin wanted Minsu to bet on the leader fight again. Yuzong seized them and lifted them up. After all this, Minsu still asked for help because those offenders had crossed the line. Furious, Yuzong shouted at him. They'd almost got caught just now, and Minsu was saying that again, as if Minsu wanted to rot in there forever. Yuzong ordered Sejin to watch him. If Sejin did not follow Yuzong's orders, he'll double his training. The staff handed them cushion pads and said to put them around the elderly who urgently need to go and rotate it. After that, she told them to secure their adult diapers properly. The old man thanked her as he was feeling refreshed. Everyone had to give that a try. There was no such thing as an easy job in this world. Minsu was about to change the next old man's diaper, but when he tried to take it out, the diapers had disappeared. Exhausted, Minsu turned and saw the offenders wearing the diapers as shields, and they deployed diaper rangers. One was ready to fight Minsu, thinking he's the loser monster from room A. Anger surrounded Minsu's soul, but Sejin stopped him because Kyung ordered them to stay quiet. Minsu let out a sigh because he couldn't ignore that kind of provocation. The guys weren't fooling around. They even caught a monster to protect the world. It was Wang Hyuk. Minsu remembered Wang Hyuk's recent injuries and angrily shouted at them. Sejin pressed Minsu's head to hold him back. Minsu wanted to fight Sejin, but Sejin said something. The offenders complained to the guard that they were picking fights. The guard said if they keep causing trouble, they'll be sent back for discipline training. Minsu doesn't have to make a big deal out of this and put Yuzong Hyun in trouble. Outside the room, sea offenders were wondering how long they have to keep playing underlings. They wanted to break the front-toothed guy. They were only playing along because of money, but now he really thinks he's the king. Tito said watching Seroom's back was just a way to live comfortably for now. They just need to grab the chance to go higher. The place where only real strong guys gather and many privileges are given, the red prison uniform. And there's a rumor that they're selecting the next candidate. One of the top candidates was there. Gas Sejin lost to Lee Minsu. It looks nonsense to the guys by looking at him. Tito will beat Sejin to prove himself to them. Minsu realized Sejin was right. It was time to endure. To solve their room's problem, Minsu can't let Yuzong get caught up in this. Minsu was walking while thinking. One offender put his foot in Minsu's way and Minsu fell down, and the offenders laughed. Minsu burned with anger. Suddenly, Semin gave him a handkerchief. It seemed like Minsu was seriously hurt. Semin touched Minsu's face. He was tough like his brother. Minsu grew confused as Semin mentioned Yuzong. Then Minsu saw her name badge. Semin left while telling Minsu to take care of her little brother. Minsu started thinking who her brother was. Then Minsu remembered the magic word Yuzong told him to fight Sejin. Minsu just came up with a great idea to deal with the Searoom guys. Then Minsu hit Sejin's head back for hitting him earlier. Minsu told Sejin to settle this one-on-one as it made Sejin happy. Now he's going to beat them just for fun. Semin was waiting for Yuzong while using her phone. Yuzong came with a juice can and apologized for being late. Semin thanked him because Yuzong was the reason she was able to meet Sejin. Yuzong said Semin had been helping him all this time too, and he was only doing it because he gained something from it. Semin punched him, saying Yuzong had a real talent for making people want to beat him up. They both smiled. Then Yuzong asked her if she had heard about the red prison uniform. Yuzong learned it was Semin's first time hearing about it too. The other guards were either avoiding answering or keeping their mouths shut. Yuzong will head in now, because who knows what kind of trouble his little brother will get into again. And Yuzong will ask Sejin to keep an eye on him. Semin said earlier she saw Minsu holding back even when others were picking a fight, and that was impressive. Yuzong said Minsu takes after him, so of course he's impressive. Even if he doesn't listen, he knows what he has to do and does it well. But still he entrusted Sejin with watching over him because he was reliable. Yuzong's little brother was dependable and manly. So they decided not to worry about them. There was no way those two would end up fighting. Back to Minsu, he told Sejin to settle this in a fight, and Sejin agreed. They went to fight. Room C offenders were mocking Sejin. Minsu told them not just the kids in their class, they even play pranks that crossed the line on the elderly. Sejin was confused. Minsu said their next target was volunteer Nuna Semin. Minsu said he's worried about Semin as they can pull a bad prank on her. The Room C guys started laughing. One of them came near Sejin and said Sejin is scared of Minsu. Sejin punched him because Sejin should care about his sister. The guys grew nervous. Semin was pretty, but the more Sejin thought about it, the more pissed off he got. Sejin will make them pay for messing with their room. Officer Shin burned the Room C leader's cigarette and asked if the outdoor activity was comfortable for him. And he even had to forge documents to barely get this. The guy thanked Shin as he was able to smoke, and he had prepared a little bonus this time. The guy always gives Shin some pocket money, so he should be the one thanking him. The guy said if they take over a block and recruit the construction crew, he'll give him even more. The guy wanted Shin to get in touch with the special cell as he'll be going to meet them in person soon. Officer Shin shouted that it was something the warden manages, and if they get caught up in this wrongly, both of them will fall into trouble. Suddenly, one offender arrived as there was a big problem. The person informed them that Sejin was confronting their group. Shin tried to approach them, but the guy stopped him, saying he was planning to deal with the situation with Tiho. The offender led them the way, and Semin heard it. On the other side, Minsu was provoking Sejin, telling him to beat them all. Since Yuzong made Sejin watch him, Minsu used Sejun's trigger button to eliminate the enemy. This was using the enemy to subdue the enemy, fighting fire with fire, eye for an eye. It was just a guy, and they wanted to take him down. The Room C offenders dared to touch Nuna. Minsu was enjoying it. They grabbed Sejin and one prepared a punch. Then Minsu got too involved in the fight. He kicked the offender as Sejin could handle this one, so he punched him. Suddenly, Sejin nervously stopped. The big guy was heading towards Sejin, saying Sejin can't dodge anymore. The wall trick didn't work anymore. Sejin gave him an uppercut. Minsu was shocked. Sejin had gotten stronger after training with Yuzong, and Minsu too had gotten stronger than before. They both weren't ready to stop. They started enjoying the fight, and Sejin called Minsu Mama's boy again. Minsu shouted Sejin was a Siskin pervert. They ended up fighting each other. The nuisance was gone. They had to fight again. Tiho kicked Minsu, and Minsu hit the ground. To Tiho, Sejin doesn't look like someone who'd lose to a rat like Minsu. Sejin was a former candidate, and he wanted Sejin to fight him one-on-one. Sejin kicked Tiho as he was no one to interfere. Just like the rumors, Sejin was pretty strong. Tiva wanted to see if Sejin can endure too. Minsu was confused about the person who interfered. Suddenly, the room's sea leader called him from behind. This was the guy's final offer to bring Minsu's entire block under his control. Once he gets the red prison uniform, he'll take good care of Minsu. Minsu remembered the guy who lent him shampoo back then. Minsu smiled and said the guy messed with the old man in their room, so he'll not let it slide. The guy covered him with a polythene bag and kicked Minsu's head. The guy shouted he's being nice, Minsu should listen. What the guy really wants is a strong subordinate, someone strong like Sejin. Compared to Sejin, Tiho was much stronger. Tiho may only be ranked D, but his pure strength was Class A. Sejin thought Tiho was taking the hits on purpose while attacking him. This couldn't go on like this, he'll end up losing like before. Sejin had to attack too, but Tiho's power and endurance put him one step above Sejin. Sejin was confused about what he should do in this situation. He remembered the time when he asked Yuzong to teach him. Yuzong told Sejin his skills were above Minsu's and he had longer reach because that was Sejin's only advantage. If long reach was Sejin's strength, then he should seal it away. Yuzong asked Sejin if Minsu had both long reach, strength, and endurance. How would you fight him? Sejin tried again. Then Yuzong said he'll teach Sejin a way for him to become stronger, Sejin's own way of fighting. Tivo said Sejin and he were on totally different levels. It made Sejin furious and Sejin was ready to show Tivo exactly what a difference in level means.